Enumclaw Detective Grant McCall's setup. Judge Beth M. Andrus whitewashing hate crime. Prosecutor Jason Simmons and prosecutors enshrining lies. Judge Lori K. Smith's embrace rejection of rights. Title: Follow the Finger. Enumclaw policeman Grant McCall and his co-conspirator created lying accusations through a multi-level marketed hate crime. A hate crime prosecutors and Judge Lori K. Smith fully used to create a lawfare against a righteous Christian church. Reasonable individuals are painfully aware of the fact that the court and police systems in the United States are thoroughly corrupted. Corrupt lawfare and hateful rhetoric are now the norm. Washington State Prosecutors have a long history of corruption, which is detailed at consider.info. Everything discussed is supported by overwhelming evidence, some of which are located at consider.info. Enumclaw Police Detective Grant McCall and his co-conspirator framed up a false crime with the full approval of King County prosecutors of Seattle, Washington, combining favoritism towards police and the anti-Christian radicalization of Washington State. It was a perfect storm for legal abuse. Enumclaw Detective Grant McCall is a radical Baptist, believing that only one version of the Bible is God's Word, namely, the 1611 version of the King James Bible with its outdated these and thous. Combined with a self-righteousness that is pathological with the abuse of police powers, this matter comes easily into focus. To quickly grasp the situation, consider a policeman with a co-conspirator who plants drugs in order to frame an individual the two of them despise. This is the same concept, except on a grander scale. The co-conspirator had been grooming a false accuser for quite some time. The co-conspirator, in her own words, is well known for being a liar, a bully, and a manipulator. Many have suffered greatly under the sociopathic behaviors of this individual. It came as no shock to anyone that she and Enumclaw Detective Grant McCall had groomed the individual to make lying accusations. This brings us now to the law lynching courtroom in Washington State by Judge Lori K. Smith and Judge Beth M. Andrus. The setting is Seattle, Washington State, King County Court, and the city of Enumclaw. In the case of King County Superior Court, State of Washington, Plaintiff versus Malcolm Frazier, Defendant, Case Number 12-1-0186-0 It is essential to clarify that the true plaintiff in the King County Superior Court, State of Washington, was against Sound Doctrine Church of Enumclaw, or Timothy Williams. Washington State prosecutors engaged in abusive legal tactics to pursue an impossible crime aimed at eliminating Timothy Williams, or Sound Doctrine Church, from Enumclaw because of Washington State's well-understood opposition to Christians. The defendant, Malcolm Frazier, was the pawn used by King County prosecutors and Enumclaw police to proxy prosecute Timothy Williams. The co-conspirator and radical Baptist policeman, Grant McCall, incited a hate crime by tapping into decades of opposition from others who had long resisted the preaching of Timothy Williams. Combining the anti-Christian hostility of Washington state officials, a flammable mixture of hatred and prosecutor corruption exploded. Those who, for decades, had honed lies will pay a heavy price of judgment by God for putting an innocent man in prison. This is why God commands in the Bible, do not go about spreading slander among your people. Do not do anything that endangers your neighbor's life. I am the Lord. Leviticus 19:16. Overwhelming evidence, including videos of the trial and clarity of events, can be found at www.consider.info. It is worth reading again the transcript of Dr. Yule's expert examination of the setup by Detective Grant McCall. A setup the King County prosecutors and judges protected and embraced. Dr. Yule's credentials are impeccable, and he was one of the founding members who established the codes by which an accuser was to be questioned by King County. Codes that Prosecutor Jason Simmons, Judge Lori K. Smith, and Detective Grant McCall ignored. Partial transcript of Dr. Yule. Every allegation comes from the detective. Well, my overall comment was that this is an absolute terrible interview. Did Detective McCall ever give an opportunity for a narrative response? No. Does this interview adhere to the basic tenets of the Washington State Guidelines? No. I mean, this entire interview is not acceptable. Every single alleged act, is suggested first by the officer. Every act? Yes, every act. Okay, so the act He talks about touching the chest and touching the crotch first. He talks about him the complainant touching the accused first. Okay, let me slow you down there. He talks about anal penetration first. You said that I would ask the counsel give the witness an opportunity to finish his answer before he asks another question. And every allegation comes from the detective. He's the one who suggests all of the things that happen. And she either agrees or disagrees with him. But she's not. She isn't. Right from the get-go, he tells her why she's there and what the allegations are. She says you've been molested, that it happened with somebody living in your house. It happened at a certain time ago. He shouldn't say that this is how, if you wanted to do an interview to make suggestions to a complainant, this is how to do it. End transcript. Detective Grant McCall's scripting of accusations. The co-conspirator had already primed the manipulated accuser, and this is why Enumclaw Detective Grant McCall knew what the answers should be. Court records prove that the accuser initially insisted no penetration had taken place. See graphic at consider.info. When Enumclaw Detective Grant McCall questioned her about whether the defendant's finger had entered her vagina, she repeatedly denied any form of penetration. Her statement was unequivocal. Never, penetrated me or anything. To escalate the charges to a felony, Detective McCall needed an allegation of penetration. When he couldn't establish vaginal penetration, he shifted his focus to anal penetration. Introducing the idea himself, he asked, "What about your anus?" The accuser hesitated, stumbling over her words. Sensing this, Detective McCall immediately called for a break, shutting off the recorder at a crucial moment. This interruption conveniently provided an opportunity to reshape the narrative. Alone with her during this break, he coached her, shaping her account to align with his desired allegations. When the session resumed, her testimony had changed, aligning perfectly with the detective's narrative. When the recorder was switched back on, McCall simply said, "Okay." Immediately after, the accuser began narrating a fabricated account of the events, now claiming, "Yeah, he did, but it only happened for a few minutes because I screamed really loud." This sudden shift in testimony, influenced by strategic coaching, which the court chose to enhance, raises profound questions of criminal activity by Washington State. A direct transcript reveals how this false narrative was constructed. Here is a portion of the manipulation and the key turning point in the co-conspirator and Grant McCall's setup. Detective Grant McCall. "And you're sure that his fingers didn't penetrate your vagina?" Accuser. "Yes." Detective Grant McCall. "What about your anus? It's okay if you want to take a little break?" Accuser. Unintelligible. Break. Detective Grant McCall. "Okay." Manipulated accuser. "Yeah, he did, but it only happened for a few minutes because I screamed really loud." End transcript. There are so many examples of complete corruption in this case, but we do not have time to discuss them at the moment. The larger agenda. Prosecutor Jason Simmons and the Gang of Five Jobs should have been there to protect Sound Doctrine Church or Timothy Williams from such a hate crime. Instead, for selfish and ideological reasons, police, prosecutors, and judges used the hate crime's lying accusations to prosecute a crime that was impossible to commit. Yes, impossible to commit. This is why Enumclaw Detective Grant McCall would not examine the house where the alleged crime took place. You might correctly ask why prosecutors, police, and judges refused, blocked, and played stone deaf toward every call for an investigation. Indeed, again, Enumclaw Detective Grant McCall did not examine the house where the alleged actions were to have occurred because it would have stopped the hate crime dead in its tracks. The reason for this is that it would have proven the crime to be literally impossible and exposed the setup that was in progress at the time. This case was not about an individual defendant. It was a proxy attack on the Sound Doctrine Church and its leadership, particularly Timothy Williams. Detective Grant McCall and his co-conspirators sought to dismantle the church through legal means, and the prosecution was complicit in this effort. The fabricated allegations were part of a broader campaign with a predetermined goal: to destroy the church and its influence. Again, see the website for proof. Prosecutor Dan Satterberg's decision to assign 5 prosecutors to a single case highlights an unprecedented level of bias. Under his direction, these prosecutors devoted significant resources to targeting the church, not in pursuit of justice, but to dismantle its operations. The consequences were devastating: the destruction of a business, church, and bookstore, ultimately forcing the church out of town. Prosecutors Dan Satterberg and Leesa Manion clearly support this unethical campaign, demonstrating a deliberate intent to dismantle the church rather than uphold the law. Perverts of jurisprudence. We know that the law is good if one uses it properly. We also know that the law is made not for the righteous, but for lawbreakers and perverts, for liars and perjurers, and for whatever else is contrary to the sound doctrine. 1 Timothy 1:8-10. Judge Beth M. Andrus' favoritism towards Prosecutor Rich Anderson came with a wink after reprimanding him for his inappropriate, prejudicial, and offensive remarks. She whitewashed the criminal actions of the city of Enumclaw Detective Grant McCall, which contributed to a narrative aimed at undermining the church and its operations within Enumclaw. Eventually, it destroyed a business, church and bookstore, while driving the church out of town. Though Ms. Andrus was a pastor's daughter, she systematically proved that she is not a Christian believer. Judge Lori K. Smith collaborated with King County prosecutors to obstruct the defendant's right to mount a defense. She transformed the criminal court proceedings into a chaotic family court environment that enabled deceitful accusations to make a mockery of justice. Judge Lori K. Smith, so bribed by being named Woman of the Year, perverted justice to ensure a guilty verdict against a man. Judge Lori K. Smith and Prosecutor Jason Simmons literally voided the Washington State Constitution's freedom of religion along with the Constitution of the United States, right of association, religion, and Bill of Rights. Prosecutor Dan Satterberg specifically allocated 5 prosecutors to target the church. Prosecutor Leesa Manion received backing from Satterberg and takes sinful pride in being the first Korean woman to hold a position in the prosecutor's office. Ms. Manion actively supports the corrupt practices established by Satterberg to the extent of rehiring Prosecutor Rich Anderson. Detective Grant McCall of the city of Enumclaw was involved in orchestrating a false hate crime. He deleted evidence and crafted accusations while refusing to investigate the claims. Aware that examining the facts would reveal the deceit, King County prosecutors obstructed and suppressed any attempts to initiate an investigation. The prosecutorial team included Prosecutor Mark Larson, Prosecutor Leesa Johnson, Prosecutor Nicole Weston, Prosecutor Rich Anderson, and Prosecutor Jason Simmons. This deliberate reinforcement of the lie was not an oversight, but a calculated legal maneuver. Multiple prosecutors, including Mark Larson, Leesa Johnson, Nicole Weston, and Rich Anderson, maintained direct and continuous contact with the accuser's family and extended family, ensuring that the lying narrative remained reinforced and unchallenged. This was a concerted effort to create and sustain a falsehood that would secure a conviction and destroy a church that Washington State opposed. Never would prosecutors, police, or judges use accusations against a woman or gay individual to attack a church or association. Ever heard of a public school and its related clubs being poxy prosecuted? Consider the fact that when a police person is accused of a crime, you never hear of prosecutors and judges poxy prosecuting the police chief and fellow officers while asserting they do not associate with others outside the police cult. If you are facing accusations of a sexual offense in King County, be aware that the judicial system has demonstrated a pattern of manipulating testimonies, implanting false memories, and enabling corrupt police practices. The reach of this corruption extends far beyond the courtroom. Prosecutor Dan Satterberg, along with Prosecutor Leesa Manion, have compromised multiple facets of the legal system, from medical institutions such as Harborview Medical Center to social services, kids' court, and various nonprofit organizations. These entities work in tandem to fabricate charges that will lead to a guilty verdict, regardless of the evidence. Their actions reflect a strong, if not aggressive, disregard for factual integrity and the rule of law in order to further their self-worth and agendas. Indeed, the Washington State Supreme Court, when presented with the evidence and facts, responded that they would not even consider it, that they would not, quote, even look at it. Keep in mind that this Supreme Court has demonstrated bias against Christians, as evidenced by their actions against a Christian grandmother for her refusal to arrange flowers for a same-sex wedding. Additionally, the police misconduct occurred during the peak of the Me Too movement, which is worth mentioning as it parallels the circumstances leading to the events involving the manipulated accuser who had been groomed to accuse. The current Washington State Supreme Court enshrining right rape and complete police corruptions are Justice Deborah L. Stevens, Justice Charles W. Johnson, Justice Barbara Madsen, Justice Barbara A. Madsen, Justice Stephen C. Gonzalez, Justice Cheryl Gordon McLeod, Justice Mary I. Yu, Justice Raquel Montoya Lewis, Justice G. Helen Whitner, Justice Salvador A. Mungia. Note, not a single individual, group, or official, either involved in or assisting with the case, objected when Detective Grant McCall sat alone and deleted evidence. Nor did anyone raise concern when Judge Lori K. Smith outright stated that the Washington State Constitution's protections of religious freedom did not apply. These are just a couple of examples among many documented violations of truth, justice, and basic reality. The above is a brief summary in text form. A more detailed post with graphics, supporting points, and visual illustrations can be found by visiting the website. The Consider Podcast, examining today's wisdom, folly, and madness. www.consider.info.
And every allegation comes from the detective. Well, my overall comment was that this is an absolutely terrible interview.
Did Detective McCall ever give an opportunity for a narrative response?
No.
Does this interview adhere to the basic tenets of the Washington State Guidelines?
No. I mean, this entire interview is not acceptable. Every single act, alleged act, is suggested first by the officer, and
every act?
Yes, every act.
So the act
he talks about touching the chest and touching the crotch first. He talks about him touching, or excuse me, the complainant touching the accused first.
Okay,
he
let
me
slow you down
penetration first.
You said that he.
I would ask that counsel give the witness an opportunity to finish his answer before he asks another question.
And every allegation comes from the detective. He's the one who suggests all of the things that happen, and she either agrees or disagrees with them, but she isn't. Right from the get-go, he tells her why she's there and what the allegations are. She says, you've been molested, that it happened with somebody living in your house, it happened at a certain time ago. He can say that this is how, if you wanted to do an interview to make suggestions to a complainant, this is how to do it.